Alrighty, Jake Stuart with the National Sports Media Association. Today, I am joined by Jeff Zrebiec, the Baltimore Ravens beat. Jeff, this is your fourth time winning this award from the National Sports Media Association. First off, congratulations. What does this award mean to you?
It's awesome. You know what I mean? And it doesn't get old because, it's voted on. It's by your peers, so that's always the most rewarding part of it when your peers honor you and believe that you're doing a good job and should be awarded for that. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is just, pride and honor just to be in the company of so many other recipients and other people I look up to, I respect, in some cases I'm friends with. So it's just cool. I mean, you obviously don't do this job for awards, but to get such a good honor with the job you guys do too, it just always feels great.
Jeff, I know for a lot of us that read The Athletic, we open up and we see your work on a daily basis. You've been covering the Ravens, the Orioles with the Baltimore Sun for a long time as well. I'm curious, what brought you into this industry and where did you start before you were covering the Ravens and Orioles?
Yeah, I don't know. It's you a lot of times you set yourself out to do something when you're really young, and you sort of get into other things, and your first kind of love, so to speak, goes by the wayside. But it's probably something I wanted to do since even before high school, and I was born in New Jersey, and I tell the story a lot. And my father worked in New York City, and I was a sports fanatic, and he used to kind of bring home some of the New York papers for me, and I'd watch the games the previous night, and then next day he'd bring home the papers for me, and I'd read what other people were saying. It's always been something I've fascinated by. I've enjoyed, I find challenging, and I did the whole high school newspaper thing in high school, and we had a state championship football team the year I was a senior, and I got an opportunity to cover the game. It was back at the old Giant Stadium, before they had the new stadium, which shows how old I am. But I just went up in the press box, to watch the game with the rest of there's other reporters covering the high school state final, and just watching what they were doing and how they did it. And it kind of ignited a fire too. So, I did the whole high school newspaper thing in high school, did it in college, got an internship at the Baltimore Sun while I was in college. And when I went home from college, those first couple summers, I worked, I helped out with a New Jersey paper, the Asbury Park Press, and it just sort of all led to this. It was something I always wanted to do, and I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to kind of build up and having experiences, and it's all kind of led to what I'm doing now. So yeah, I'm very proud how it's all worked out.
Well, I know, Jeff, New Jersey and Maryland too. Very, very famous for sports writers. Who were some mentors you had growing up, and who are some sports writers you looked up to when you were first getting in, and maybe now as well?
Yeah, so many, and the good, when I started in the Baltimore Sun, it was just like you read the Baltimore Sun, and I didn't start as the Orioles beat writer. I started actually as like an agate clerk at the paper, and then I started covering high schools, and then I started covering some of the smaller colleges like Towson, Loyola, UMBC in the area. And then I covered the Orioles and just the history of Baltimore baseball writers, all the guys, Ken Rosenthal and Buster Olney and Tim Kirkchin, and I'm leaving so many guys out. And then I got to be good friends with guys like Peter Schmuck and Rock Kabako and Dan Connolly, and friends and colleagues, and Joe Christensen and all those guys. And you take a little piece of what they're all doing, and you just learn. And some great people from the Washington Post, like Dave Sheinin was on the beat at the time. So all those guys that kind of show you the ropes, and you watch what they do and kind of learn how they do it. And then and that's sort of, I think that helped me on my career path, in a lot of ways. But man, all the New York writers I used to read when I was a kid, and so some of them are still around. I still do. It's just, Bill Plaschke is a guy who, if he writes it, I try to read. And then there's so many people at the Athletic that, I'd say the same thing, when they write, even maybe not necessarily if they write a team specific thing, but if they write a bigger takeout, I want to read it, just because, I tell people all the time, I think that's the best way to get better as a writer. You read, and see what others are doing and how they're approaching it. And you get a lot of good ideas by it.
Well, I'm curious, Jeff, and I'm sure, a lot of our listeners are as well. You've been writing about some big teams and some big moments over the course of a couple decades. Is there a story, or maybe a few stories to you, that maybe stand out because of the moment, or just, that you're really proud of?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest event I've ever covered was obviously Super Bowl, back when the Ravens, when the Ravens won and in New Orleans, and there was all of the power outage. Yep. And the Ray Lewis's last game and the goal line stand. I mean, looking back on it, you always wish you did different things, and you wish you were more in the moment. That was my first full year on the Ravens beat, and I was kind of overwhelmed. You know what I mean? So I look back on that and say, man, I wish I did this, or I wish I did that. But as far as event, that was it. But a story that I kind of think back on that, I'm extremely proud of. Everyone knows the story now. Darren Waller, he's on the Raiders, tight end. He's been quite open and honest about his addiction problem and his drug problem. And he was, back when he was on the practice squad of the Ravens, he was a draft pick of theirs. He had some, he flashed a little bit, but he had issues off the field, and they kind of prevented him from, contributing. But, I kind of caught up with him one day, and he laid it all out for me, his issues with drugs and depression. And, I was the first one to write that story, and it didn't get a lot of pub because Darren Waller was on the practice squad, and it's been written many times since because he's a star. But just the whole process of the story, where I didn't know what was going to come of it. I had all these questions prepared, and I'm talking to Darren, and he was so incredibly honest about his journey and his trials and tribulations and rock bottom, and how he had to take a job as at a supermarket, to kind of to get money. He just needed money, and he needed to keep active. And feeling like I just stayed out of the way and let him tell his own story. Obviously I wrote it, but it wasn't me. It was him being willing to talk and just being so honest up front. And he let me talk to his parents and all that. That's kind of the one story, at least in recent years, that stands out to me.
Wow, that's incredible. That's a special story, and obviously one you don't see every day. It's the stuff that as both fans and even in the industry working, you don't go into a game expecting to hear or see that kind of stuff. The last thing I wanted to ask you, Jeff, and thank you so much again for your time today, is what advice do you have for younger sports writers just looking to get in?
Yeah, I said it a little earlier. I mean, read and write a lot. I mean, there's been times along the way where, you get frustrated at times. You wonder if, especially as a young journalist, it's not always easy. You don't always start on the NFL beat or the MLB beat or major college beat. I mean, I started as an intern, and then I was a clerk on the desk where I was working late nights and getting, box scores in the paper and writing roundups that didn't even have my name on it. It was a proverbial staff report and all that stuff. But that was those were the best experiences I've had in terms of learning experiences. I was in a newsroom, watching pros who've been doing it for years and years work, getting a chance to communicate with veterans who, have been in the business so long, and getting some advice from them. And the hands-on experience was great. So I kind of always tell, younger journalists, don't worry about where you're going. Just get your foot in the door, make the best of the experience. Yeah, maybe sometimes the pay's not going to be great in the beginning. And yeah, in the early, I took kind of the ag clerk job when I was a senior at Loyola, at the Baltimore Sun. And yeah, all my friends at Loyola were going out every Friday, Saturday night, enjoying their senior year and planning, senior trips. And I'm sitting there at, 11:30 at night in the Baltimore Sun, taking, box scores from wrestling matches, wrestling meets and cross country meets. So, but I honestly, it was the best decision I've ever made, So I usually tell people, don't worry so much exactly what you're doing when you start. If you're getting good experience, if you're going about it the right way, it's going to lead to bigger and better things. And that's why I wouldn't turn up my nose under any, job offer or any, internship, all that. The big thing is just getting your foot in the door.
Four-time Maryland Sportswriter of the Year. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully we'll see you in Winston this summer.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much for having me. Great catching up with you.
Absolutely.